Welcome back from break. I'm pleased to announce another Braincube customer to stage for a discussion with our CEO, Laurent Laporte. Please welcome Laurent and Filippo Iannucci, Regional Diagnostic Process Engineer from Owens Corning. Please welcome Filippo and Laurent to the stage.
You good?
Yeah, we're good.
Thank you, Philip. We met like 2 years ago in the Go Beyond Summit. You are right. You and your colleague, you made a large explanation of what you were doing. So can you tell us who you are, who you're working for, and what is your occupation, your products every day?
Absolutely. So, Filippo Iannucci, working for Owens Corning. It's funny, the round circle moment of 2 years ago was up where were we in Portland, and was discussing Owens Corning's journey from a digital standpoint with one of my colleagues, Ashley, on our nonwoven group. So I'm in the roofing segment of Owens Corning, and we were talking about how we are implementing what we're calling a regional model. So we were setting up engineers to review plant data, to assist 4 plants, but to assist multiple plants all at the same time, right? And the idea of this was we're going to have essentially a tiger team set up that was going to be reviewing digital data, using different digital tools, and interacting with our plants to be able to pull forward some of those alerts, some of those insights, be able to work with our plant teams, not only just to bring up new things, but to be able to actually get after it and start looking at our overall digital footprint. So a lot of what that effort was do we have the right sensoring? Are we seeing the right input? How do we build a data culture within our plants? Because at the moment, it's a lot of what we all talk about, right? Plants are siloed. Certain people have different objectives. What are we looking at from a reliability standpoint? And that effort that we were kind of explaining 2 years ago was, well, how do we start to unify this? How do we talk about data consistently? How do we start bringing that in from a daily, weekly standpoint, right? So when we talk change management and re-hitting on the same reports, re-hitting on the same data points. So that's roughly where we were about 2 years ago of kind of getting that really initialized, right? So Braincube was one of our major tools with that, and really heavily relied on dashboarding, the report module within that SPCs, and utilization of like the comparator tool.
Yeah, what we saw this time is a will for standardization. I mean, every plant was running on its own historical way. The idea was we will study these ways through the data, and we will tell you how we want you to run. So it's kind of a very demanding approach. What I remember is you were explaining like you have reports coming in the platform every day, and you see if things have been going according to your expectation or not. If it's not, you were calling the plants to ask them, okay, what happened? Do we need to fix something, or is it a question of understanding? And so you were fighting for making sure that they will comply to your expectations. And when they could not, that they would solve why they could not do it, to go back to what you wanted. Is that true? How do you deal with that daily? That means, because you remember you were saying that you were babysitting to some extent these plants to make sure they changed the way they drive, and you were the one that were telling them, if you apply what we're telling you, you will reach higher performance. So you are taking this ownership of this performance.
Yeah, and so a lot of that, though, I don't want to say that, I live in Connecticut, right? None of our plants exist in Connecticut, but I travel probably 75-80% of the time. And same as my colleagues in the other regions, hitting those plants, a lot of our time is spent interacting with the plant, not just from a Teams meeting. It's getting to the plant, working with the individuals, training them on the tools, and not really trying to have this top-down, you shall moment, right? But this is why we are looking at this. This is what PM we want to pull forward when these two signals kick, right? I had a really good meeting 3 weeks ago. I was in our Kearney plant. Shout out for you guys. We had a alert set up post a BDA that we helped with 2 years ago. The alert kicked just as we expected. We had 3 signals kind of intertwined, had done a little analysis for it, logged that in, and one of our supervisors got the alert on his phone and said, hey, it's Monday, we're going down tomorrow for a PM, we need to pull this bearing off, right? And it's those moments that really started to allow us to gain traction. So we started seeing those, and it was a little backwards looking, right? We needed a failure to be able to get in and do a breakdown analysis to say, hey, how do we not make this happen again, right? What do we need to look into? Is there a sensor that's already there? Do we need to implement something new? And so there's been a lot of that work of trying to make our data footprint a little bit more robust. But then working with the individuals on, hey, that small win, this is why we are looking at that. A lot of our time in the last 2 years has been how do we get our plants now proficient and running on their own so that we aren't the ones interacting. We aren't the ones bringing up that data point. You guys have now adopted the data culture, right? You're asking the same questions we're asking now, but you get to action so much quicker.
We'll get into this in details. I hear the last question on this first phase is, what are the real results, outcomes you can prove that have been coming out of this initiative? In fact, do you see improvement? What type of improvement and things? How do you measure that?
So measuring is always difficult. We spent a lot of time, and I think we've hit it on a couple ways of, that bearing example, right, is we prevented something that didn't ever occur, right? So how do I capture and say, well, if that occurred and we didn't have it kit up, that would have been 12 hours. I don't know if we could, right? But what we did capture is we did alert and we did start pulling a PM forward, right? So our standard tracking of, are we compliant to our maintenance checklists? Those KPIs we started hitting on more. We've actually included some of them within Braincube. So our tracking on what were our normal processes naturally just started including the tools into them. And that helped enhance those situations. Other tracking, again, difficult to start on, did we change a mindset? Did we change a culture, right? There's really no number out there that can tell me, hey, I've now got people in a plant and these meetings now flow logically, right? It's not, hey, I've got an emotion of, I think this is bad. I sit in DMSs now, daily management, again, that Kearney plant, somebody brought up, I think this is bad. Well, show me the trend, right? And being able to hear those messages, having that come out of our teams, albeit not very quantifiable, has drastically changed a lot of the other standard KPIs, right? Because we are not inherently reintroducing work or doing break-ins, as we'll go check that trend now.
It's more speak with data, less assumptions, more proof and thing. Okay, but so you have been running this for a period of time. You started to mention the fact that this rely heavily on you, your capability to be available for supporting the plans and things. So what are the first lessons learned about this? Like you implemented a platform, you leverage the information, you improve the information level, then you start to use them to deliver some use cases on process stability, on maintenance prediction and thing. Okay. Heavily depending on you and your colleague and whatever. So what are the lessons, and how do you see now you should start to evolve? What are the steps? What did you learn, and what do you want to implement now?
Yeah, absolutely. So initially that Tiger team held the responsibility of pulling that, right? And as we worked with the plants and started to gain some of that traction, it was keying off on certain individuals of changing us from the champion to having a plant champion. That took training, that took time of building that traction with just changing a mindset and being able to handle that, then push to that individual now driving what we did, which would then allow us to move to the next plant. So until we got that champion up and running within the plant, and what we would do is very similar to the Tiger team. It wouldn't just be one champion of they do all of the data. It would be a person who was very focused on reliability. It would be a person who was very focused more on a QA type scenario. And we would split out the different dashboards and report module areas by those different groupings of the current silos, and the expectation was each person would be able to come forward now with their section of the pie, right? So we offloaded by implementing a plant champion, but even with those plant champions, we didn't want to overburden, right? So the idea was, how do I split my data into the appropriate silos per se? But the idea was that we were forcing still everybody to come together and still talk about them in unison.
What you're describing is the first part of my life in Braincube. That means when we started Braincube, we were doing this job. I mean, I was having like 12 to 15 customers, wherever they were, with multiple plants. And I had first to prove that there is a giant opportunity if we start to leverage the information. And after, my job was to try to make these people autonomous in doing this, and to see how I could implement, find the right guys, train, and make them autonomous. So it's difficult to get out of this when you are with a system where people need to change their habits. Okay, so what are the new expectations you have from all this? Because you have the champions, they do some, they still rely on you, but I think you have probably now a better vision of where you want to go in the next 2 years, 2, 3 years. And what are these new expectations?
Yeah, so current direction where we're pushing, right? And a lot of the, I suppose, direction or ask from our plant champions is, how do I get, we have Copilot. How do I get Copilot to just tell me this? How do I not have to log into the tool so that I have to pull this information, right? Can I just have it sent to me? Can I have a standard report? And so that's a lot of what we're working on now, right? So I don't think we got into it with Sylvan's presentation yesterday, but the automatic reporting style within these LLM tools is something that we want to go after, right? Is how do I build something that's now going to trigger for a shift supervisor every 2 hours. So he knows his team is winning on that shift, and it gives him that form of satisfaction, right? How do I better shift handovers, right? So site to site of, this is what happened the last 8 hours, here's what we want to do moving forward. And really our idea with that is, how do we expand on using the LLM to summarize what we've started and really are getting into the next phase of implementing, I guess what I'm calling is defining our process, right? Via SPC, via tracking of process variables, and again, if we can logically define that, I'm hoping, some of that is a hope, I suppose, but adding that context consistently just by summarizing, we know we built this data group. This data group should explain some form of our process, and by giving a standard report on that, we should not have to rely on the LLM to have that context every single time, because I think that's one of the main struggles that we all see right now with Gen AI is keeping context is difficult. But if we predetermine some of that context and then roll with it, we should be able to start to leverage that.
Yeah, the story you are describing is something we see with some of our customers. I mean, first they had a production system. That was the first phase where they decided to digitalize this production system in many different things. They choose platform solution and things, and it helped. It helped first to create probably the ground base, which is the access of the information, centralized information. And so we were in this first phase where if we engage in using a system, we improve our continuous improvement strategy. Okay. For me, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when ChatGPT came, everybody was mocking a little bit the system, because you were asking, when was born Napoleon? He was answering the date of the last movie of Napoleon, which was funny. But I saw that it was first an interface, and they didn't know how far the system would improve to really give us some interesting insight based on a complex analysis. But I saw it was a natural interface, so that's why we jump on that. And today, the system changed our perception, probably, of what we can expect from AI. We expect answers. So there are different type of answers. The first is, I have a question, like, I want to increase the temperature of this part of my machine now for this reason. Is it relevant? So when the guy has this question in a control room, in the past, you had two types of guys. The one that was doing it anyway, and the one that was wondering if he should do it and not really doing it, you know. And so after, you can have a discussion with an engineer that might or might not have the answer, and a question with somebody else, and so on and so on. Today, we're expecting that the system is giving you an answer based on what we know. If you do increase this temperature, you will have no impact on your KPIs, and you might even waste a little bit of energy because you need to heat something somewhere, blah, blah, blah. So it's not a good idea. And that's what we are expecting from the system. The second thing is, as you said, the system should work for you. That means it should always run and contact you, say, hey, Philip, I have something to tell you. I see changing condition outside, and so I predict that within an hour, I will have to ask you to adjust some of the parameters to adjust to the increase of the moisture and the temperature, whatever. So the way we work on that, I think everybody understands, is we don't really rely on the Copilot Plus that will be the orchestrator. We make sure that Braincube will always answer a relevant, or respond with a relevant answer through Companion. Companion is really the one that becoming this user that will replace the process engineers or the knowledgeable people and be available all the time. And yes, we want it to be able to answer the question, but we want it also to push. RTPO is more a proactive system that always scan the conditions, and when condition is changing and there is a risk of degradation of performance, we'll see what can we do, and if we can do something that compensates to stay at the top level or to minimize the impact, then we want to provide this. And imagine I tell you, okay, I want you to do 3 things. So the first thing we figure out when we say that with a customer, if you give 3 actions to a person, he will maybe do one of them, maybe 2, maybe 3, but he will decide the order of the action. That's really bad, because if the first action is way more important than the second and way more important than the third, you know the Murphy's Law, the guy will start by the third. And the third will have no big impact. They will say, why would do the 2 other ones? You know, I did that and had no impact. So we are working on the system to make sure that not only the system tells you, hey, you got to change. We give you a reason why you got to change. And we'll tell you to do that first, and we'll tell you what's next to do, to make sure that we have the maximum impact first. And after with the question, will you do it? If you don't do it, tell us why. It's because you can't. That's interesting. I can't because I have a bearing problem. I won't push a machine. You know, I don't feel confident with that. So do you want us to find another way to find performance? So there will be a discussions between the system that will be able to answer up to a certain limit, up to saying, no, you will lose performance for a period of time. There is no way we can save this, but stay there, don't touch. If not, you will degrade. I found out with RTPO that everybody is looking at the recommendation we do. But there is another thing that is super important, is all the things we don't want the guy to touch. You know, we tell them do this and this, but don't touch anything else, because sometimes they touch things and they degrade. So that's where we're going. And as you say, you want after their Copilot to run reports or to be ready for them. You will be able to do it only if our companion is doing the job. So where are we on that? Did you start to implement something about this? How we will go forward on that?
So standard with some of the OC implementation, we're a little slow to adopt towards some of the AI push, right? And maybe that's me being a little too pessimistic about some of it at times. But current, we are, I suppose, baselining is the best way to put it. Of we're using our current LLM capabilities to reassess our master data, right? We're finding a lot more success with areas that are defined. So we're taking our LLM, we're passing and giving it ISA 88 and 95 and saying, look at our current data structure. Here's a UDT overall that we set up for our plants. Can you match our current tag structure to this, right? That's giving us capability to start looking plant to plant and being able to take that one step back to ensure that we can kind of push forward to where you're asking us to go, and that's where we want to go, right? But in order to not hit the hiccups of, again, thinking about the Sylvan conversation yesterday of it found a tag. And I don't know if that was by chance, by luck, maybe it had context, right? But said that burner is on because I know that tag and I saw that. But it was named appropriately. It had an on-off on the name structure, right? What if that was named differently? What if I used a different abbreviation? I didn't have that context. And so we're putting a lot of effort at the moment into, like I said, a lot of the master data structure, a lot of our data grouping structures. And I'm hoping that, you know, when I sit here probably next year, that's going to pay forward for the companion app when we really start to push into it of, you know, we have a standard UDT. Within that UDT, there's 2 variables, and I know I want to have alert control on them. I know that I want a PV minus set point alert. I know I want to have it within, I don't know, pick rules 1, 3, and 5 for SPC control. So we're going to that level with our UDT structure. And now we're kind of going back with the LLM to help us go faster across the plants to rebuild what we've built our current on. The ability, I think, to have that systematic of here is how we set up every plant is now roughly the same. Can I now ask Companion to do a lot more of that? And will it understand a lot more natively, right? Where I don't inherently have to have as much context. And so that's where we're doing a lot of our current, right? But I think that's a lot of to push into exactly what you're asking of how do I get Companion to start making those pullouts for us? And again, our answer to that or our hope is by grouping these things together, by pushing into you know, the Sigma tool. I got a briefing on a couple weeks ago, very excited for that because I think it can enhance where we're going, but again, inherently it is going to allow us to add a context within the tool. Not inherently just a brain box, but to be able to add that comment to just, this was an out of control situation. We can quickly say, here was what we did, and we can start kind of building the clean context layer because I think if you ask any of us, I mean, I know my own personal C drive on my laptop is a mess. I have a bunch of stuff. It probably is contradictory in some form of nature. And we need to start building a layer somewhere that says, here was a good BDA. Here was a good you know, root cause analysis that we did. Hold that there and have kind of that one source of truth layered in somewhere. And I think that will give us the ability to really take advantage of Companion through, I'll call it more of the rudimentary stuff that we've been doing since what Schubert was the 20s, right? That really took off in the 40s and 50s, and we started digitizing it in the 80s and 90s, right? But we've been doing it for a while, you know, 100-something years now. But having that definition, I think, eliminates a lot of that gray area that the LLMs struggle with at times.
Yeah, 1 year ago when I introduced Companion in front of the audience in the Go Beyond Summit, for me the vision was clear. We were answering to one of the comments we had is, even if the system is simple, some people have a hard time to use it at the right level. So we thought like just prompting the system, give me a graph, give me an analysis of things would make it easier, and it makes it easier. Okay. Today, with the evolution of the technology, step number 2 is the system start to run for you, start to generate things. It put a lot of pressure on the quality of your data management organization. And then when you want to cross information between lines or between plants, it puts another pressure on the standardization of the information. The more standard we have, the more like yesterday we saw we can call something an output, we can call it a flow, we can call it an objective. And so, yeah, the Gen AI sometimes find correspondence, I would say, in between, but the more we help him, the better we're sure that, and that's what we call the context, will help us. We are using Gen AI to do that. I mean, today, last year, Companion was about supporting to use Braincube. Today, Companion is about when you do a product clone, you have two things that are important. First, you need to model what happens to the product during some complex process steps. So sometimes you don't have a library with the right things. So you need to do a kind of a code, you know, a kind of a calculation, transformation. So now if we ask the companion to do it, we don't have to do it by ourselves. Second thing is all the data description. You can run all your tags and things, which are sometimes well done, sometimes super messy. But we know also our customers, they might have a way to do, and then they make an acquisition, and then a part of their plants are coming from a different worlds with different automation. So we have very different environments. So what we do is we ask the system to generate, you know, the description of the tags that makes more sense, and it's working better and better. The more we'll do it, the more it works. So we help on the PCB side. You talk about SPC. In fact, Braincube is covering the three main way the human invented to control the process. Before process control, we had only one instrument. It was a chronometer. It was in 1910 and in 1920. The idea was to produce more and to organize a task, blah, blah, blah. And then by doing that, we did produce way more, but we did also scrap a lot, like 10, 20% on some lines. So in 1936, they asked the statistician to help them to do this first SPC things about like, tell me if I'm at risk to build things. So we have SPC, which is kind of an old technology, but some customer really like it, and some of their customer wants a proof of process control in automotive, in aerospace industry. The second thing for me that was a game changer was Six Sigma. I mean, we started to talk about variability. And we have an advanced center lining system, and with a cross-rank, Braincube is well known for being super capable of picking up the things and solving the problem. And we talked today about the complexity, and complexity is adapting to change. This is what we are bringing with RTPO. But there are links in between. You cannot do RTPO if you didn't discover which are the variables that actually describe the changes or actually are the levers where you can work. And on a SPC is something very normative, right? You have 8 types of tests that tells you something's wrong. So it's cool. I know something's wrong, but I don't know what's wrong. So if you use a cross-rank, you have a chance to know what's wrong by comparison, for example. And if you want to improve your capability, you can keep on putting pressure on the people to reduce their process window, but it becomes at a point where they cannot run the machine anymore, or you can just rely on a system that is adapting, so RTPO. So we are linking all this, and Companion will support this because it will help us to take what happened into SPC as a trigger to say, hey, if you start to put an RTPO on this SPC, your capability will triple because we have capacity of reacting and things. So there is a kind of a continuous link where this technology will help to bridge the silo into the systems, because we have siloed system, but I believe we have siloed features in the system, and the GenAI is changing that.
Yes. I was explaining with Ben, though, like, you know, the way we see it, right, is exactly that of we're building that foundation, right, with that Sigma tool, right? We're using the companion to recenter line more often now. And I mean, we're potentially doing it with individuals that didn't know what SPC was 2 years ago. So pushing into that data culture, right, of, hey, this is how we want to view it. This is what variability is. This is why we want to pull this out. This is how it saves, is what 2 years ago was. Now it's that constant of, let's recenter line. Let's have companion tell us, can we squeeze this or can we not? What is that process in our plant now for it, right? How do we get after, and what is the system actually telling us? I think that's a pivotal step too, as we talk a lot of it's logical thought and the ability to now think, hey, I got to go squeeze my process, right? You need that ability to know, hey, I can squeeze a process to trust RTPO, right? I have a computer signal that's telling me it's, you know, not behind an APC, it's in front of me on a screen telling me, go change this. But if I don't understand how to recenter line and how to squeeze process, why would I trust something that's telling me, hey, go move 2 degrees? Will it change my process? Will it do something different? And I think the ability to start, again, at what we're calling something we've done for a very long time in manufacturing, really push that recenter lining activities will gain us inherently a little bit of trust when we start really pushing into the system is saying, right? Because I think inherently if you just start this process or a sentence with just do it because the system said it, most of my operators will just laugh at me and not do anything about it, right? But as I push through, hey, we want to start squeezing this. I think we can get 2 degrees, or we can control this to a thou. We work on that. We work on a process. We start to understand the machine more together. And then when we start fully enabling Companion to start saying, yeah, move that, they'll understand, 1, the machine more, but 2, they'll actually be able to trust, hey, we're able to do that. So linking together with Companion 100%. And I think it is a building block process, though, right? Just naturally helping us, cognitively putting those pieces together.
Yeah, we really believe that this intelligent infrastructure, I call it, is the future. It means what? It means, every week I get an email or call from guys like Sylvain or Ben telling me, oh, look what I've done with GenAI leveraging Braincube, and that's coming in Companion. And that's funny, we went from asking him to do something, he's doing it, to he's doing it, he's giving me an analysis of the things. I can analyze the graph, tell you something. Then after, we were doing very complex things, and the system was explaining why we should do this and this on the process and what could be the consequences, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, we need these expert systems, and we need to trust them. So we need to build the right foundations. And when we get them, we can start to really automatize. After the optimization, which is good, is how we automatize everything that could be done even without any human intervention. It's easy to trigger today requests for change in a sensor when something is bad to maintenance, and making sure that the maintenance system is checking if we have the parts on shelves, or if we need to make a call and to get a supply very quickly. But now we really want to have this intelligent infrastructure dealing with the information and coming back to us according to not, the job we were doing before was trying to improve on a few rigid KPIs, quality, OE, whatever. Today is adapting to economical conditions. So going from mass production to quickly niche production, where for example, our customers that are in the tire business, they went from being very, very good on the market to being attacked by Chinese producers that comes at a lower cost and a higher quality. So today is how good I can be in making niche product, where my margin is really high, but I need to have this fantastic product. And you go in a workshop and people are doing the same thing for 30 years. So you ask them basically to totally change their mindset. That one of the first learning we had with this American tire company in 2011 is they were having 50 models in their plant, and they were having 2 or 3 main runners, like everybody, the things you manufacture most. They were doing continuous improvement only on the biggest main runners, 1 or 2 if they have time, and they were applying systematically everything they were finding to everything else. When you have Braincube, if you can apply it and you look at what's going on, and you will see the other product where you have an improvement, the product where you have no impact, and the product where what you're applying is not good at all. And that's what we want with the system of the future. Well, our first promise was, okay, you have 50 products, guess what? You will be able to analyze the 50 products without disturbing the production line. It was better. Today, the promise is, okay, you don't even have to analyze this 50 product. The system will do it for you, and it will tell you what to do, and it will trigger you when it has some limits, and that's where we want to go. I think we want to go where something which is, if we want to fight the complexity, the only way to fight complexity is going to a certain level of understanding, building a sophisticated system that at the end, what we do is simple. And today, giving an instruction that makes a lot of sense with an explanation to somebody in the workshop is quite simple. You have a demo of what is our TPO today. We can build any kind of dashboard for you. We adapt to what the customer wants. But the first version that will be very, very exciting will come at the end of the year, because we have the prototype of Companion is becoming, in fact, the interface and not just a dashboard. A lot of people like the dashboard. Our customers, the ones that don't have a control room, they don't have a SCADA system, they don't have supervision. So having a dashboard like RTPO giving them instruction, they love it, in the food industry, something like that. The one that have a dashboard, that have a SCADA, is contrary. They say, we don't want another screen. So we need to implement the things into their systems. So that's part of it. And what's the best way to implement something that talks to you, where you can talk, even if a device, ask questions, ask things, and that's where we're going. This first version is coming at the end of the year. It's very, 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 very exciting, because yes, you really have an interaction with something that tells you based on calculation you can trust. So the quality of data is key, and that's what I call this expert AI. Yeah. So, conclusion: where are we going?
Yeah, we're going to I think not needing me at OC anymore, but I think that's for the best. If we can have Companion really kind of replace that mindset and help others,
Change a lot of things for you, no?
Yeah.
Should cut down your time for responding to a lot of.
Don't tell Andy or Kelly though that they're saving.
Okay, I didn't say
time,
that.
right?
Okay.
So, but yeah, I mean the goal that I'm hoping for is a lot of the hours spent searching or the hours spent pulling the report and working through, those get replaced with let's go get more sensoring. Like, let's work on projects that are going to continue explaining our line, right? How do we continue kind of pushing into giving more insight to Companion, right? Because right now it's that digital footprint, and you're only going to be as good as what you can see. So how do I take those hours, push them from Companion off, and then really start being able to expand its view?
Yeah, let's prepare for different scenario. Let's uncover things we never know and that can be valuable. Let's make sure let's also knowing our limits. If we change of scenarios, there's plenty of things we will be able to do. Okay, so we're here. Time for a few questions. I don't know if any one of you want to react to this experience of Owens Corning.
Great, you have a question. I don't want any awkward competitor questions.
Any questions for Philip and Laurent? Sorry. Oh, yeah. There you go.
So a lot of great context there. Thanks, guys. My question is regarding trust of Gen AI. So I oftentimes like to ask our customers and prospects, from 1 to 10, what is your trust in Gen AI regarding making critical decisions or data quality decisions, which you guys have already mentioned is a key component to your digital strategy. What's your level of trust with Gen AI in making some of those critical decisions from a data quality perspective? And how have you driven that trust in your organization?
That's one of our struggles, I'd say. I'd say overall, for doing certain tasks, trust is really high, right? Generating emails off of standard monthly reports, right? It's easy. It's defined. It's, hey, there's these KPIs. Go ahead, generate some text around them. You can explain it, generally speaking, pretty well. Get into something a little bit muddier, right? Why did that fail? There's a lot of reasons why that could have failed, right? And what should we pull from a variable standpoint? And that really starts hitting exactly what we've been talking about, is how clean is your data, right? And there's going to be expanding measures on that, but I think that's a lot of our effort of how do we continue to clean that, but not just to gain trust in it, but how do we start seeing what it's thinking, right? Like, from what logical jumps is it making, and what logical jumps do we need to go fix to be able to gain more trust in it, right? So
you can trust Gen AI today to do basic visualization, because it knows how to leverage a library to generate a graph or something like this. When you want to do an optimization or advanced calculation, you need to be sure how this has been processed. So you need to rely on a site system for scheduling, for even maintenance signal analysis or something like this. If not, you have no guarantee that the system will tell you things that are relevant. If it's very simple, might do some mistake with this. If it's very complex, it will answer something, and because it's complex, you don't know how to analyze this. So I would not use GenAI for advanced calculation optimization, but for all the rest. It's making all the rest super easy. I mean, instead of using a complex interface to get to this optimization, if I can just ask the GenAI to do it for me as a virtual user, it's already a fantastic value for me because it's doing it while I do something else, maybe still with GenAI. And if he's doing it with the right system, if he's capable of leveraging the right information and the right processed information through the system, then I have the high level of trust. So on my scale from 0 to 10, and GenAI is capable of generating advanced optimization, I would be closer to 0. But do I need it to make all this, working smoothly for me all the time? I would put an 8 to 10 today, and I think it's improving every day. Yeah.
Any more questions? Oh, yeah.
Thank you. I guess more of a generic question, but at the moment, the AI presentation we've seen, it's very kind of suggestive of what we could do to improve it. Do you see the future of maybe that becomes automatic and a set point, it recommends a set point of drop the temperature by 100 degrees, that it automatically would manage that change for you?
Yeah, are you talking about the closed loop to the machine?
Yeah.
In fact, the more and more I think about our mission is not to talk to human at the end, is to talk to machine. Why do we talk to human today? It's because humans, you know the statistics. 95% of the plane that crash were coming from human mistakes. If you put the plane in automatic mode, they probably would not crash. Okay, but we're still human. We believe in critical conditions that we want to make the decisions. So closing the loop is not very difficult because it's just writing an instruction in a PLC or sending the instruction to a SCADA system. So that's the only difficulties we see on that, which is not a big difficulty, is you do process optimization on what you measure. And you send instruction on different tags that are the set point. So you just need to have a link in between this to say, this is where I do the optimization, but I send instruction on another tag. You don't send back the instruction on what you measure because it's just a measure. You send it on the PV or the process value, whatever, the one where you set the thing. So it's not very difficult. You just need a table of link and things. So, and yes, our mission is to talk to machine, I think, more and more, and to make it like, and so the human will set their expectations. I want to reach this, or this is my strategy. So if you have multiple KPIs, you will link them, or you will parallelize them, or whatever. And theoretically speaking, the machine should adapt. We discussed with OEM. I'm going to Brazil in two weeks to discuss with a giant OEM there, because they want to sell their equipment with this closed loop of AI on it. And they consider to use technologies like ours that are very advanced, instead of building ad hoc models where they know they will have a nightmare of maintainability and cost. So yeah, but this is the idea, yeah. And I think the customer will start by being precautious. Does its recommendation make sense? Then they start to be trustful. And I give it to my people. And one day people will come and say, why I have to adjust this temperature again and again when the system is asking me? This has no value for me. Why you don't do it? It's exactly what happened with our car, when we put this automatic system for speed and things after we get a trust. So yeah. We're a Six Sigma type of company, so we talk to machine.
So you mentioned that there is going to be the next technology evolution of having this within the SCADA system for the customers, that they already have the visuals, that they don't want to have another visuals of the Braincube. So is it like a Gen AI will be talking to the Braincube at all embedded in the SCADA screen? Or is it like the Braincube itself being more like intuitive within the SCADA screen, that operators can also work simultaneously between the operation and the optimization ideas that the Braincube will provide.
What we are saying is probably the interfaces, as we knew before, will change a lot. When it becomes just interaction with text and discussion, you can put it everywhere. So I'm discussing with people like Wonderware, our friends of Wonderware, with Polka, another solution that are doing things, and they say why these people should have, you know, two interfaces. If it's just a web-based solution, we can just send back a flow and we just put it in the same interface. And I think our teams will want one main interface that will be the aggregation of everything that comes. So there is no fight for the interface today because it's a fight for screens and it's not very relevant. So when you see these giant control rooms, they still have space to have something more. We designed the next version of Braincube, not like a dashboard, but like a bar that takes a quarter of a screen, because it runs on a tablet or it runs on a phone. And so you can put, if you have like 4 screen for your SCADA, you can sacrifice a quarter of one of these 4 screen just to have the instructions and the discussion with Braincube, until it will be totally integrated into the SCADA by itself, the supervision system. Yeah. They call it the zero interface era. We're going to the zero interface, so everybody will. You see all these people and us. We do this. We talk to our phone like, tell me what's the best hot dog place nearby Wrigley Park in Boston. That's the future also for our teams.
Anything to add, Philip? Well, thank you, Philip. Thank you, Laurent, very much. Round of applause for our speakers. Thank you.